point, our actions are reactionary to a cancellation of coverage. And the second phase of that is to come back with some competitive quotes, and roughly in a month's time, we anticipate we'll be back before the board with some proposals to see how this policy might compare to the open market.
Yep.
Any other
You know,
discussion?
just for the record, if the policies come back greater than this, then just send an email and say, hey, here are the policies, and we can say something publicly at the board meeting, but I don't know that we need another agenda.
You know what, I'll probably bring it back regardless, because they will quote the insurance differently. So I think that's outside of my scope as an individual to say what that change in from a claims made to an occurrence form, how much value to place on that. So I'm probably going to bring it back regardless.
Yeah, I think it's the responsible thing to do. But I understand your point. I mean, at first blush, are we going to find that this is a great deal? I think the board should ultimately take a look.
My guess is probably going to be in the ballpark.
Yep.
We'll find out. So we have a motion by Mr. Tominella with support by Mr. Battanti to approve the general liability insurance policy from U.S. Specialty Insurance Company for $135,206. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda is item C1 from the Water and Sewer Department to purchase 4 new pickup trucks for the Water and Sewer Department in the amount of $105,494. We've got our Engineering Services Director, Mr. Axtell, here. Mr. Axtell, can
I just point out something before you get started,
Sure.
Dave?
yeah, I saw it
In the
too.
request, it says at the top 109,709, and then at the bottom it says 105,494. So
I apologize, and it is
just
109.
clarifying.
No, 109,709, because 2 of the trucks, I had conversation with Mr. Verkest, and if you see on the front of the trucks, you can add extended cab for 20, I believe it was 2148. And so, yeah, $2,148. So on the 2 half-ton trucks, those would be extended cab pickups. That's adding that. Regular cab pickups are difficult when you have guys with all the Carhartts and you're in the truck, you're at a water break, you don't have all your gear on because you don't want to be sweating in the truck, but you're out turning valves and guys are jumping in and jumping out, and you've got blueprints in the back, a metal detector in the back, and things that have to be kept inside a truck, and a regular cab is difficult for some of those. The 3/4 ton that will be used for snow plowing, you don't want that added length because it's just that much harder to maneuver. So what it is 2 half-ton pickups that are extended cab and 2 3/4 ton trucks that have 8-foot boxes. And what we're replacing are 2 1998 3/4 ton 2-wheel drive trucks. As you can see from the pictures, none of the trucks are in good shape. They're actually getting to the point where they're becoming safety hazards. And if anyone needs to see it, I have the entire maintenance records here for all 3 trucks, everything that I have done. It's to the point where we're starting to put a lot of money into these trucks to where I don't feel we're getting any gain. It's almost getting to the point where it will be considered irresponsible. One of the trucks was already gone. It completely failed to where it was not salvageable to put money in, and that went to the Macomb County auction the previous year. So there are 3 trucks at the shop that would be replaced, and as you can see, the 2 lift gates, the picture of the bed, the lift gates are literally sagging on the truck. They're not safe. There's holes in the floorboards. Some of the ones I should have taken pictures of where we've already put patch panels in the floors, and they're starting to rot around the patch panels. I know Mr. Battanti met me this morning, and he came over and took a look at all the trucks and saw things firsthand. I'm not asking for trucks for the sake to have new trucks. The last new truck we bought was 2009. So we haven't had new trucks in a long time, and these are 17 years old, as I've said. It's time.
All right, discussion, board members?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to state that I think that, and I've said this in the past, I think that Mr. Axtell and his crew does an excellent job at attempting to maintain the vehicles on their own. They not only maintain the vehicles, but they maintain the garage itself. As Mr. Axtell mentioned, I went to just take a look today. I think that the work that they've done in the garage and the work that they do to maintain the vehicles is very commendable. I think Mr. Axtell does an excellent job of stewarding the funds that are at his disposal. And so I believe that this, and in viewing the trucks, I mean, it's incredible. I'm not an expert, but just any layman looking at those trucks can tell that they really shouldn't be in service for this purpose. So
Yeah,
I want to make that observation.
Right. The mileage doesn't reflect the hours of use because these are trucks that are used constantly, and they're locally. These aren't expressway miles. These are local stop and go miles. They're long idling. The pictures suggest we've squeezed about all the life that we can out of these trucks. I should say our water and sewer personnel have squeezed all the life out of these trucks. And if not today, I don't see where we're going to squeeze much more out of them. And there comes a point where there's an issue with reliability. You could argue there's an issue with safety. But ultimately, providing timely, responsive service to our residents, you got to have good equipment. I think we've gotten all the life out of these trucks we can, and it's time to take a look.
Lift gates are bolted into the bed, and the beds are rotting. If one of those lift gates comes off, there'll be somebody asking us why we didn't address it and why we let it get to that point.
Right. Another just a point of consideration for the board, the extended cab is an option. And Mr. Axtell brought that to me and asked if we thought there was some value. So we're looking at 2 3/4-ton trucks. And those would more likely be used for heavier applications, maybe plowing, for example, and 2 half-ton trucks, also 4-wheel drive. The idea would be that extended cab gives you the ability, say for example, sometimes these trucks are used to go pick up parts or run errands wherever it might be. It just gives you secure space. It gives you dry space, and it's about $140 a year if we get 15 years out of these trucks. I think it's just a wise use of dollars. It's additional interior storage. So when we considered it, that was the reason why we opted for the double cab, which bumped the figure to $109,709. Any further discussion or motion this evening?
I would just like to say one other thing for the residents that are watching. These trucks are kept indoors, and we attempt to get as much life out of them as possible. They're not sitting out in the open. They're kept clean by the crew, so I really do believe that we've done as much as we can to get the life out of it that is possible.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of 4 new pickup trucks for the Water and Sewer Department from Red Holman Buick GMC in the amount of $109,709.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Battanti. We've had some discussion. Is there further discussion?
Would we, and this might be a question for Mr. Axtell, do we want to include in our motion to give you some authority to dispose of the other trucks? I mean, would that be convenient if we did it right now?
And yeah, and
they'd
that's
probably go to the county auction.
the county auction is normally in May, yes, and we get notified, and we have to deliver the trucks, let them know that whether they're in running form. If they're not in running form, we still have to tow them there, or whatever the case may be, and then they sell them to the highest bid, which we've done, and in some years we've done fairly well. Other years, it's a bidding auction. Depending on the vehicle. There's years where we used to have silent auction and residents would come in and bid, and there were years you did okay and years you didn't, but the county auction is the way we've gone in the past, recent past.
I can make an amendment to my motion to include the authorization for Mr. Axtell to take these trucks or get them ready for the county auction taking place in the spring.
And that's 3 vehicles?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, continued support, Mr.
Yes.
Battanti? So we're saying we'll authorize him to send them to auction. All right, good.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I know several years ago, your predecessor got the trucks from Red Holman. I went and helped him pickup. That's my side of town where I grew up. But he ended up getting them through the Oakland County bid rather than the state of Michigan bid, because the Oakland County bid was lower than the state of Michigan. I don't know if you looked into that, but
I did not. I strictly went through the Michigan My Deal, and I mean, I couldn't believe, because I actually, my brother was looking to purchase a truck, and he's flipping his wig at what we're getting these for, as opposed to, I mean, you're talking in.
I mean, it might be $1,000. I mean,
And
I think the last trucks we bought were around the same price like 6 years ago. But
Yeah, well, the last truck we bought was a 3/4 ton two-wheel drive, and they were very similar in price. I mean, you had to that couple $1,000s for the 4-wheel drive, and there wasn't much other wiggle room. And I apologize for that. I talked to some previous people and went through the My Deal website, and like I said, we're pretty much a GM fleet. So like the bulk oil things that we buy, the weights of the oil are what is in the GM trucks, as opposed to like diesel. You put a 1540 weight in all the diesels, but some of the Ford vehicles are 520. The GMs are 530s, things of that nature. So, you know, this is what we're familiar with and what we've, you know.
Well, Red Holman's the dealer, so just ask him when you call him, hey, can we get a better deal through the Oakland County? He'll tell
Well,
you.
yeah, I mean, there's certainly,
It's the same dealer.
we've authorized
Right.
109, 709, that's what we know we get. It would be good if you can, you know, get a figure on the Oakland County, email to the board. If it comes back 108, spend 108. You've been authorized for
Absolutely.
109, but, you know, if
I don't
there's
know.
another number, it's worth asking.
I am
And find out what that figure is before we pull the trigger.
absolutely fine with that. And that'll lead to discussion on my next item, so we'll finish this one and be right there.
Fair enough. If there's no more board comment, before I open up for public comment, I'd like to point out to the resident that these are GM vehicles. Welcome to public comment.
I just want the one he has in his warehouse, but
Well, so the resident can sit down, right? Because it's a GM vehicle and we're supporting
Well, I would like to
GM, right?
congratulate the board on choosing GM vehicles. I think that was a very good choice. I'm just up here to ask the question. I was all set to chew on it and everything else, but as I hear what's going on and take a look at the pictures, I can see that we probably should get rid of them. So I just wonder what happened to the, wasn't there some trucks that came from the fire department that went to somebody? A couple were replaced and they turned them back into the,
yes,
Yeah, we can, was that this? Oh.
that's the extent of mine. So if there's a, you know, I'm just curious as to what happened to those trucks. I know they're red, so they're probably not as good a fit with the water and sewer, but.
Well,
I'm just
actually,
wondering
there's
what
two
they
of them. One is, it's a 1998 3/4 ton extended cab 4-wheel drive, and it's here on the corner, and it's used by the inspectors. I've been, you know, they get into the habit of wanting to use their same truck, and I understand that, but in the wintertime, when there's a 4-wheel drive truck sitting there that is, in my fleet, the fleet is now 100% maintained by water and sewer, including the building department trucks, the maintenance gentlemen's trucks, and our water and sewer, all of our vehicles. Everything that we can do, we do ourselves. The stuff that we can't, that's the only thing that gets sent out. We've saved the township thousands and thousands of dollars just from quotes that the maintenance men have gotten on their vehicles. So the answer to your question is, the red 3/4 ton pickup is here that is used by the building inspectors, and the red burgundy former Fire Chief Explorer is also used by the inspectors. There were white pickup trucks that came from the water department to the maintenance department. And it's going to be soon enough that I will be back here. I'm doing my homework right now on vehicles for the building department, because they're in very much the same shape as this. And as that Explorer, you look at it and it looks great until you put it up in the air on the hoist. I mean, it is rotted terribly. But both vehicles are in the fleet and they're operational.
All right, good. Any other, well, we'll close the floor for public comment. Any other board comment? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Batanti to approve the purchase of 4 new pickup trucks for the Water and Sewer Department from Red Holman Buick GMC in the amount of $109,709, and to authorize Mr. Axtell to ready 3 vehicles to take to the auction for Macomb County and get the best price. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is C2. So we'll just, I guess, just keep on going and ask you to tell us about the snow plows that you had in mind.
Okay, as I said, well, actually, the last vehicles we bought that snow plows went on was a 2001. And obviously now these are gonna be 2015 vehicles. You can see on the front of the quote for the 2500s, Mr. Roop from Red Holman threw some snowplow prices on there, you know, the different options. Harrison Township has always purchased them through vendors that we have dealt with in the past, and I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I have sort of took a look at their prices and would like that option. So what I did is I took the highest price, and there's a few dollars added on, took it up to an even number of $13,000 to purchase 2 snowplows. But I'd like to be able to shop and get the best deal, just as we spoke about with the trucks when I call back for that.
Right, so we know that we can get the highest end snowplow that you have here for $6,310. So $13,000 would cover that, but you'd ultimately like to go to some other vendors to see if you can improve on that figure.
Yes, sir.
But when all's said and done, we're gonna take 2 3/4 ton trucks and we're gonna have a snowplow for each of them.
Yes.
All right, so the request then is 2 plows at a price not to exceed $13,000. Any discussion, board members, or is there a motion?
Well, just to say, you know, just so the citizens know, the water sewer does all the township snow plowing. So it's a fixed cost. We don't pay a contractor to do it. The water sewer department handles that task for us.
Yeah.
And not to say that you don't, there aren't times when that plow comes into play for water main issues or to serve it or to work in cooperation with other municipal partners, whatever it is,
And that's something that we are moving toward with the Macomb County Road Commission. During snowstorms, they have requested our help, but the problem is we have 2 1 or 3 yard dump trucks in the fleet with snow plows and 1 pickup, a 1999 Chevy pickup, which we've already had to replace one of the frame horns in the front because it rotted off and caved over. So that is used gently to plow here at the offices and some of the fire departments, but we use the 2 dump trucks mainly to plow. But my fear is to go out and help the county with the vehicles I have in the condition that they're in. I can't jeopardize my obligation to the township.
Sure, absolutely, right. First and foremost, we have an obligation to service our own properties.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion this evening?
Make a motion to purchase 2 new snow plows for 2 of the new trucks purchased for the water and sewer department, not to exceed $13,000.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Capro, support by Mr. Brado. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board.
Thank you very much, board members.
Okay. That was a big wad of stuff there. All right. Next on the agenda is item D1. If I can find it. Board members, we recently received notification that one of our part-time inspectors was leaving to go to work for another community. We began an investigation into what our neighboring communities are paying for trades inspectors. We saw a range of rates from $30 to $35, in many cases including full benefits. Our current electrical inspector and our plumbing mechanical dual certified inspector are each part-time employees. We do not pay any benefits. The electrical inspector works an average of about 20 hours a week. The plumbing and mechanical inspector provides both plumbing inspection, mechanical inspection, which is 2 different certifications, and also backflow inspection for the water and sewer department, and that's an average of 24 hours a week, 24 hours a week. The last time these inspectors had received an increase was in 2012. Since that time, construction has begun to rebound, new construction in particular, and there's a greater demand for inspectors. That demand goes up at the same time that we're coming off of what we might say as a result of the economic decline. There was I guess you'd say if we go back in time, there was sort of a flooding of the market of inspectors. On larger communities, as a cost-cutting measure, if they happen to have 2 or 3 inspectors on staff, they might say, well, we're going to reduce that to 2 or 1 inspector. So there were inspectors in various trades laid off. And there really wasn't any growth, and instead there was sort of a retraction in those fields. As a result, some of those folks have retired, some might have moved into other trades, and now that we're seeing a rebound, there's kind of almost a bidding process or a demand for those inspectors. And as a result of the growth in reconstruction, new construction, our inspectors are seeing an increase in the amount of inspections that they perform. So I'm coming before the board to request an adjustment in the rates for part-time inspectors in order to retain high-quality individuals that we currently have. The more certifications that you have, the more continuing education and credits that you have to maintain in order to continue to be able to perform the inspections. So an electrical inspector, for example, or a single trade inspector has to have continuing courses to maintain 1 license. Could be, 4 hours a month. A dual certified inspector might have to take 8 hours a month. We don't pay for the time to attend those courses for our part-time employees. Our full-time inspectors and our building official, we do pay them to attend courses to continue their maintenance of their license. But the part-time inspectors attend those courses on their own time. But we do reimburse a small amount for the courses themselves. So the proposal is a $34 to $36 per hour range for the inspectors, whether they're single certified or dual certified. Ultimately, it happens to be that our current plumbing and mechanical inspector, as I say, is actually, I wouldn't say he's triple certified, but he does have the mechanical and plumbing designation, but in addition to the plumbing designation, he has an additional certificate that allows him to do backflow inspections, which is an additional function through the water and sewer department. Is there discussion, or is there a motion this evening?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Supervisor, so I see the proposed rate, what's the current rate?
Current rate is, for each of these individuals, is $25 per hour.
So Ken and I sort of beat this up this week, and I've been waffling back and forth on how I feel about this issue. And I guess all I have to say is I don't know what the market will bear. I don't know if these 2 gentlemen will leave. I don't necessarily know that we won't get somebody else at this point. This is just me. I'm not going to beat this up or get into a 3-hour argument with you. But our current ASME agreement, the high end of a full-time building inspector in our contract is $24.77. We're currently paying them $25, and the multi-person would be $27.45. That's the very high in our contract, and that would be if they were full-time employees. Of course, several years ago when we had the building, decline, we didn't have the need for full-time inspectors, and quite honestly, we had a big budget deficit. I don't think it was this board that was involved in it. I think it was the previous board. I know Adam was involved in those negotiations with the part-time people. Do we give them something? Yeah. I mean, do we go up? I mean, the high is 27. If we had a full-time inspector, we'd pay them $27 per the contract. I will also say this, Ken, Adam, and I make $26.96 an hour. And those 36,000 would translate to or $36 would translate to an annual salary of $73,440, and the $34 would translate to $69,360. Obviously, they don't work that much. It's really half of that, but that's all I really have to say on that. I'm not
Sure.
gonna
Well,
beat my hand
address
on the fist or get into an argument. You know,
Yeah.
I thought I could go with this, but the more I think about it, until I know that we can't get anybody, and I wish it wasn't just last minute, right? I wish we would have gone out, put an
You
ad in the
can't.
paper
Yeah, you can't.
or whatever, Symboya. You know, I just think that I have a contract, and I think we're asking for trouble by giving a rate that's higher than our contract. If we ever bring those people back full-time, and I mean, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. We're probably gonna end up getting stuck with this $34 and $36 wage salary, knowing how the unions run. They're gonna say, well, you're paying the part-time people $34 and $36, so that's what you have to pay our full-time people now.
Those
Okay.
include benefits.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. The $25 and the $27.45 rates are full-time positions with a pension, with health care, with paid vacation, with holidays, disability insurance, long-term, short-term, sick pay. These part-time positions include none of that. So when our full-time building inspector attends courses, he attends courses while he's being paid by the township. These inspectors attend courses on their own time, which, that's fine, but it's a part of what makes a total compensation package. So it's important to understand that the annual salary figures you quoted, like you said, we're at a fraction of that because these people work part-time. There's a different wage rate you might pay to part-time versus full-time people. But in addition, a total compensation package includes wages and benefits. Now, I don't think you're suggesting that the dual certified inspector at $27.45 doesn't have a cost in excess of $35 an hour total cost. Certainly, just the pension obligation is in the 35 to 40% range. So, I mean, that
Well,
guy's probably.
it's roughly 50% more. So take the 70, a full boat would be about $100,000, a little over $100,000 maybe.
Right. So
in
to
that
say,
position.
so to say that the rate that we're proposing here is even equal to what our contract provides, certainly would be a misrepresentation. I'm pretty confident that these individuals would be happy to take health care and pension in lieu of $8 an hour or $7.50 an hour, or $8.50 an hour. And as far as the notion that we'd be stuck with this, certainly you know that we have engaged in negotiations with the union. These members, these individuals are exempted from the union at this time, and the rate that they receive is a policy and it's not contractual. So to say that they might be at some point included in the contract in the future, that's certainly an option. We know that, we had the discussion just last week. But to say that they're included automatically at any given rate, that's subject to negotiation.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident that they're gonna be included in the contract, not this time, but the next time. And I don't know how much I'm allowed to speak about that, because that sort of was outside of negotiations. The legalities of this, I don't know what I can say, and
Sure.
I'm sort of biting my tongue here.
Yeah, me too.
I think we paid way too big of a price to bring this tonight, and at some point in the future, we'll be able to tell the board what that is when the contract comes, but I think we paid way too big a price to bring this tonight.
Okay? Well,
I think we can say, I don't know what we can say.
yeah, I think it would be wise that we
There's
don't
a
say.
legal issue, I can say this. These two people are part of this contract.
Not a part of that contract.
Well, they're,
What they are is they're a part of the letter of understanding when initially a union is formed. That's a matter of fact.
Correct. So that being said, because we were paying these people $25, which is under the union limit, the union has allowed us to pay these people part-time and not make them full-time jobs. There is a time that could come or might not come that the union says, we want those positions back, and we would be obligated to negotiate those positions, even part-time positions, if the union decided that's what they wanted to do.
True.
That is true. We talked to, that's a true statement.
That is a true statement.
So, I don't know how that's, all gonna come out, but I will say we're not gonna have to worry about it in the next contract, but at some point after the expiration of the next contract, that might be in the next negotiations where they say we're going to negotiate for these part-time people, and my worry is that we get in this trick bag, where they say we want, 36 and 34. I see this argument after being in all these negotiations and seeing how we lose these cases, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose at Merck or arbitrations. Once you raise these, we all know it's very, very hard to lower them back. And we always have to give up. It's very easy for us to raise things up, but bringing them back down always comes with a cost to this board, and I think we all know that. So I'm not going to argue for or against this, and the board can do whatever they want, but just keep in mind those facts as you're mulling over this item.
So when I was approached by department heads to consider this increase, I did a little bit of my own investigation into what neighboring communities are paying for inspectors. Clinton Township and their current contract, the wage schedule, actually.
I have it in front of me.
Yeah, but I didn't do a calculation here for hourly, so bear with me. $30.84 for a single, basically single certification. Take a community like Clinton Township, the volume of inspections they might have wouldn't necessarily, would result in no need for a dual certified inspector. So in other words, they can say, well, we can keep X number of plumbing, mechanical, and electrical inspectors busy. So there's no need to combine that skill, whereas for us, if we have to have a relationship with 3 individual inspectors, right now, our plumbing and our mechanical basically consumes about 15 hours a week between plumbing and mechanical, and then cross connections are consuming about 8 hours. So to say we're going to just go out and have a relationship with a plumbing inspector and say we're going to give 7 to 8 hours of work per week, or actually 5 or 6, mechanical might be 1 day or a day and a half per week, it becomes difficult to find someone that says, yes, I'll have a part-time relationship with you for 1 day or a half a day every week. What it also does is it means that when people have a need for an inspection, we're not likely to get someone who says, yes, I'll work 2 hours 4 days a week to fulfill my 8 hours of obligation. Rather, they'll say, I'll work for you on Wednesday if we can find someone that'll work 1 day a week. So what that means is for anybody who says, well, I'd like to drywall this addition, but I need to have a rough inspection on the plumbing, well, you're going to have to wait till next Wednesday because we'll only have 1 day a week when that individual is available to do inspections. Currently, we have an electrical inspector who works a half a day, 4 hours per day, 5 days a week. So that means that we can provide inspection services to our residents every day of the week. We have a plumbing and mechanical inspector who also does cross connections that has a relationship with us 4 days a week, so we can provide an inspection on any day except Friday for the plumbing and mechanical trades or cross connection. So the current Clinton Township contract is $30.84 for a single certified inspector. Again, with health care, with retirement benefits, with the other benefits. I don't know if anybody wants a copy of all these. I ran a copy for each board member if they were curious. The contract for St. Clair Shores, the contract that I found online was the one that was through 2009. An electrical inspector in 2009 was making $30.17 per hour. The 2010 contract for Sterling Heights, for inspectors that are on a 40-hour week, varies from $33 to $33.14 to $36.86 per hour. With that, again, health care, benefits, so on and so forth. So I do have a copy of them. I'll pass those out.
I know why those cities are going broke.
For sure. I
We
understand.
only pay our guys 51.
Right. So that's one issue in terms of basically saying,
Wow.
what is the prevailing rate that our other communities are paying? Because of that prevailing rate, we've got a relationship, a multi-year relationship with each of these inspectors. I think the electrical inspector probably goes back 8 years, I'm gonna guess. I don't know exactly, but approximately.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, well, they're both good individuals.
I'm not making it personal. I'm just,
Yeah, none of this is personal.
if I was making it personal, I'd make a motion and I'd be done.
Correct.
Because
Yeah,
I like
this-
the guy.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
both
great
of them.
guy, great
Right.
guys.
But the issue becomes, guys start to say, well, hey, you know, I got contacted by the folks at such and such community, and they're offering me this to do the same work, and it's closer to home, so I'm kind of looking at that. If we're seeing wages anywhere from $30 to $36 an hour with benefits, we're not gonna be able, and mind you, this board does not have to agree to does not have to make this motion. But if the decision by this board is to say, well, we wanna stick at 25, then we're gonna have to be outsourcing the building department, because we're not gonna find inspectors to do this work any longer for $25 an hour. We're gonna run into a difficult time filling those spots. But what's more important is in addition to the fact that we're gonna have to look at some figure other than $25 an hour at some point, we're gonna also have to look at if and when we do find someone who's willing to do this, are they willing, for example, to spread their 20 hours out over 5 days in a week? So that when an individual calls and says, well, I need an inspection, I've gotta take time off from work, when can I get this done? Well, if you'd have called yesterday, maybe we could have got it done, but you've gotta wait a week before we can provide that inspection service, because our inspector's only here 1 day or 2 days a week. So we're fortunate not only to have good inspectors. In the case of our, multi-certified inspector, he can perform 3 different functions for us, all of which result in revenue. But in addition to that, we've got them for 4 or 5 days a week, which gives us the ability to provide those services. So we've got to look at something other than $25 an hour. That much I can tell you I'm certain of. These were the numbers that we looked at when we compared to some of the other contracts to say this number would be a competitive wage figure compared to some of the competing communities. Keep in mind, Harrison Township is mostly built out. So Shelby Township and Macomb Township are naturally going to have a greater need for inspectors. They're dealing with, entire subdivisions being built one after another. I tease the supervisor, she must have carpal tunnel from handshaking at ribbon cuttings, and they're always building and opening things. We don't have that, but we still have to have inspectors available to provide the services necessary to check for cross flow connections, to check for, to do the inspections for all 3 trades. So we're gonna have a hard time returning to a full-time inspector status. We just don't have that much vacant land that's gonna be able to be built out. We're likely to have a relationship with part-time inspectors for a long period of time. So when we look at that, we have to look at saying, well, we're either gonna try to get into a benefits compensation package, or we're gonna establish an hourly rate that's attractive enough. There are no legacy costs associated with this. Each of these employees are at-will employees. The only thing that we can offer to them is an hourly rate. Now, I do know that our engineering services director and our building official did some investigation, some discussion on these. I don't know if there's anything you guys have to share.
I would love to address it. For one, I would like to say that both of these gentlemen are stellar. They're great to work with, and they're great with the residents. They represent the township exemplary.
And this board.
They are, and the board. They're fantastic. And I did a lot of homework on this, and I did a lot of rate comparison, and Chesterfield and Clinton both have raises on the book. So these figures you're looking at are from 2013, and they both have figures on the book. Chesterfield his comment was he's just waiting because we don't pass it. They're just waiting to take them. These are guys that are great, and I can't say enough about Doug's duty as the plumbing mechanical and my backflow inspector. We have been so far behind in the water and sewer with backflow inspection, nobody was doing it. It just wasn't getting done. And we are so far behind, and he's implemented a new program. We work together. He is training my personnel to work with him. I am intending to send 2 of them to school so that they can do some of the lower hazard that he can get them through to get us caught up, because it's just a matter of time before we will be fined from the DEQ because we are so far behind. And so now, yes, I understand there's nobody that is irreplaceable, but when you want to start the process over and start interviewing people and bringing people in, and you may not find the dual certified, so you may have a plumbing inspector, you may have a mechanical, and then I got to find someone that you have to be a licensed plumber to do the backflow, and are they willing to take that on? One of the offers he has is he doesn't have to do all of that, and he doesn't have to do any of the paperwork. He does the clerical aspect of it, and then half the clerical, and then the water and sewer does the other half for the DEQ. There's so much behind the scenes that I don't think everybody here realizes. And to hear the compliments and to have residents appreciate it, and with adding Mr. Maples to the staff, and we are trying to turn this department around, and that's exactly what it takes. Harrison Township is about built out, and when these people come in, we need to treat them fairly and with respect, because if we don't, they're not going to come see us. They're going to be the weekend warriors doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And we can either occupy our time with bad inspectors and not doing inspections and or dealing with all the issues, or we can keep the people and not have a revolving door of people. We are way behind the wage scale. And I understand it's a big jump. I mean, I can see why there's concern. But when you put the benefit package and everything else on there, there's just no comparison. And I don't want to start a revolving door. I want people to respect the people here at Harrison Township as much as we respect the residents.
I could say, and to echo Mr. Axtell's concerns, it doesn't excite me to propose this kind of a wage increase. I'm a representative of the people, an elected official, the same as everybody else at this table. It's not something I bring casually, but this is what my research has shown, this board is free to make whatever decision they choose. I can tell you the decision cannot be to do nothing. $25 is not going to provide part-time inspectors with no benefits. We're simply going to struggle to fill that position. It worked a few years ago. It worked when there wasn't a great demand. It worked when there wasn't a lot of new construction and there wasn't a lot of remodeling and again, the demand for these inspectors was different. We benefited from that. We benefited by going from a full-time inspector that was electrical and a full-time that was plumbing and mechanical with wages, benefits, and pension to going to 2 individuals. We've had a couple different individuals fill that role that are working part-time. And we've been at $25 an hour for the plumbing mechanical, I believe, since that's been a part-time position. 2012, we increased the wage for the electrical inspector from $22 to $25 an hour to make it equal to the other inspector. But the $25 per hour rate goes back to when our full-time plumbing and mechanical inspector retired. So that rate goes back certainly well before 2012. I'm not even sure, I don't even know if I could name that year, that date.
2008, and if I may, to tell you the type of person Mr. Bobstein is, the electrical inspector, he was at the $22 an hour and, you know, was told that he would move up after his probationary period, and it was delayed the 2 years, and he's still with us and still doing a great job. And as I said, Gary DeMasters over in Chesterfield, everyone you talk to speaks highly of these gentlemen. And something that Mr. Verkest touched on, and I think is of very high importance, is they are part-time inspectors and they have established schedules. You know, I understand they're not working just here. So the 4 hours or whatever they're working here, they may be going to another community. And so now that's what you're going to be trying to interview for. You're not coming in and offering someone a job for 40 hours with all the benefits and everything. You're saying, will you come work for my community for 20 hours a week and we need you these 4 days? And they're going to say, well, I'm sorry, I'm working here these days. And so how are you going to fit the jigsaw puzzle together to keep the residents of Harrison Township satisfied?
Right. Now, I can say, it could happen. We may find that individual that says, well, this will dovetail well with the commitment I have at another community. But I don't think we're gonna be able to find that individual at a $25 per hour
Not a chance.
hourly rate. So we have to look at some other number. And once we establish that number, then we have to say, okay, well, what's a number for one certification? And if you have a second or a third function that you can perform for us, how do we acknowledge and accommodate or compensate for that?
Mr. Segar, I have a question.
Yep.
So this proposal would be for the individuals that are currently in the positions? Is
That's
that
correct. Yep.
So is it possible, and I understand, you know, I've been involved in certainly enough hiring to know the difficulty around hiring new staff, getting that new staff acclimated. There's an expense to that as well, certainly. So would it be possible to consider these rates for the existing individuals, and if we have to go out and replace, maybe not start somebody at that amount of money then? You know, I understand that they're seasoned people, that they're well-known to us, doing a great job, but maybe as part of this saying that would be the rate for the existing position, and should we need to go out and interview somebody else, it doesn't necessarily start at that. I'm just offering that as a
Yep. Well, this
an
would.
observation.
Yep. This proposed motion would modify a policy that we currently have. In our policies and procedures manual, we have rates established for various part-time or non-union employees. So for example, that policy establishes rates for maintenance workers, bus drivers. It also establishes for inspectors. So to your point, no one is ever going to be hired by this township unless it's considered and approved by this board. But if, as an idea, the motion could be to modify the policy to approve a range of $30 to $36 for inspectors, and as a general range based on experience, availability, whatever it is. But ultimately, whether that number is 30, 31, or 32.50, it's ultimately this board's decision to say this is what we'll offer as a rate. So one issue is establishing a policy, and the policy could be revised to establish a range. But the second thing is we have to specifically, this board has to decide what we're gonna say to this individual and this individual on a case-by-case basis.
Well, that's an excellent answer. Then what I might suggest as a compromise is to change the policy to establish a range.
Okay.
And therefore, if the individuals that are currently in the positions, you know, we feel warrant the top end of that range, then so be it. And we have the flexibility then to pay a different amount based on experience and suitability for the job.
All right. Would a $30 to $36 per hour range seem?
Let's just put 25 to 36. What, I mean, why limit yourself on the low end?
Okay.
Right?
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the low end really, you know, we're using, that's
If
gonna
you
be
can find a guy for
discretionary.
$25, that's
Well,
what you're gonna do, right?
I'm just saying it gives you the flexibility,
Yep.
gives you the flexibility.
Yep, nothing wrong with that.
Well,
So,
that's what you do as managers, right? You want to hire
Well,
the best person for the lowest cost, right?
I don't know if
And
I
if a
agree-
guy
I
looks
don't know
at,
if I agree with that, because what I've found as a manager is that when you underpay someone, they may take a job initially, but you generally may not have a lot of success.
Revolving door or longevity.
Right.
Then you raise them up.
All right, so we propose to revise the policy to give a range.
My concern about this is if we offer them $34 to
But it's just-
$36 an hour.
Sorry, Dave. Did you make were you making that in the form of a motion, or was that just a comment? I just want to make sure.
I didn't perceive it as a
Okay,
motion.
I'm sorry, I
I
didn't
made
know
a
if that's.
comment that I'd
yeah,
like to
I'm
see
sorry, I
entertained.
thought that's where you were going.
To what Mr. Batanti was saying, if we offer them $34 to $36 an hour with no benefits, and then Chesterfield turns around and offers them a comparable hourly rate with benefits, they're gonna leave.
Well,
So
and again,
benefits is gonna cause a person to leave.
right, that's a good point, and that may or may not prove to be true. And by that, what I mean is this, for example, the relationship that we have with our electrical inspector, the electrical trade allows an individual to both serve as an inspector as well as a contractor. Whereas there's other trades where, I believe it's plumbing, in order to practice as a plumbing inspector, you have to place your license, your practicing license, if you will, or your, in escrow. So our electrical inspector is not likely to take a full-time position because he's already obligated for other time throughout his week. But that could be true for other individuals. In other words, whether it be a person's place in life based on maybe, let's call it semi-retirement, whether it be an obligation to other communities, or whether it might be, a business endeavor, there are individuals in these trades that do look for part-time work versus full-time work. The point, though, is they're comparing part-time work with no benefits to what wage might be paid full-time with benefits. Right.
Well, to what Mr. Axtell said though, they're just waiting for us not to pass this so they can hire them. Well, you know what, they're gonna hire them anyway if they want them.
Well, meaning higher part-time is what I mean. I think that's what Mr. Axtell was talking about.
But
Are you talking about full-time or part-time?
this is obviously part-time, but to touch on what Mr. Verkest is saying, Mr. Lowe, our plumbing and mechanical inspector, has no desire to work full-time. That was asked of him, okay? Mr. Bobstein couldn't work full-time if he wanted to. I don't know how he gets in, what he gets in. He has expressed that he is happy here. He just thinks the wage is extremely low. And by looking at other communities, I agree with them. I do believe sincerely that if this goes through, we will keep these two gentlemen. And obviously nothing is forever. I don't know when Mr. Lowe will retire, but I think Mr. Bobstein will probably have his electrical pouch on when he goes, God forbid. But I don't see that being a concern. I've spoken.
Does Chesterfield have part-time inspectors?
No, they have full-time. And so this is what I'm saying. This is what I was, when I referred to the jigsaw puzzle, trying to find two gentlemen to do what these two gentlemen are doing and intermixing schedules between other communities. Mr. Bobstein works here 5 days a week. He has a contract with the city of Mount Clemens and he owns his own business.
Yep.
You don't get much more of a dedicated go-getter than he is. And Mr. Lowe is exactly like him when he works for the township. I mean, he does a good job, a great job. As I said, my fear is I don't want the revolving door of employees, to establish people that when the residents and contractors come in and it's the same face that they've dealt with and you understand how that inspector works, it's priceless.
So we see at least an understanding that we might look at a range in our policy, and I think there's merit to that, and I think each individual takes into account what it is they might be willing to work for. Our plumbing, mechanical, and backflow inspector, that rate is 36. That's what we need to retain that individual. And the board may say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that rate, and that's fine, but what that results in is us trying to find one or more individuals to provide that service. And at this point, I don't know that we have a waiting list with all those. There are individuals that can provide the plumbing, there are individuals that can provide the mechanical, and there are certainly ways that we can do backflow or cross-connection inspections. but I doubt we're gonna find one individual that's gonna provide all three of those services. A single trade inspector is probably an easier position to fill than a multi-trade inspector. But in our case, having one person around for a 4-day period that can provide any of those three inspections based on demand, it really, really adds some value.
Well, then is it reasonable, I mean, to change this to a motion that would suggest a range of $25 to $36 an hour, depending on whatever the appropriate requirements are?
Yeah, let's say
Depending
first
on
and foremost,
experience and-
right. We can chop this up. So I can say this, certainly revising the policy for inspectors for a range of $25 to $36 per hour based on certifications and experience, I think that's an easy one. You make that motion, we can revise that policy. I don't think that's the sticking point. We can get that one out of the way, if you'd be willing to make that
then
motion.
Why don't you, if I may, right, and once again, once you put down in a policy that your inspectors are gonna make between $25 and $36, or $30 to $36, the union is going to come and say, this is gonna be the new rate. You're better off leaving your policy at $25, just leave it there, doesn't matter. And raise these two gentlemen singularly, raise their rate and be done with it. I mean, we get in these bellywicks all the time with the union. They read something and say, I can see the union rep now. Your policy says it's $30, I want $30 for this person. That will happen. There is no doubt in my mind that will happen.
But if you don't change the policy and you offer these guys 34 and 36, you violated the policy in the first place, and they're gonna get you on that.
But,
Yeah, once you put a stake in the ground.
but at least I can go back and say, my policy says $25. We had special circumstances with these people, and they were part-time. End of story. Once you change the policy,
But the policy,
that becomes your policy for everybody to grab.
it's a policy for part-time inspectors, correct?
Correct.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not the way sometimes the union works.
I would think that
Unfortunately.
we would run a risk of somebody a resident accusing us of not following policy if we were to take such an action. It would seem to me that there's a logical difference between a part-time employee and a full-time employee with full benefits. I mean, I haven't been involved in that many union.
You know what I think? I think maybe the next meeting you should sit in for me and maybe you'll get a better feel for what I'm talking about. We don't have that problem in the GELP, but in the AFSME, and definitely fire would jump on that.
Well, board, do
somebody
you
make
wish
a
to
motion?
entertain a policy change or not? If you do,
I'll make
then
a motion that we make a motion to a policy change for inspectors, part-time inspectors, to be paid a range of $25 to $36 an hour, and I'll leave the depending on experience and
Yeah.
whatever the appropriate.
Yeah, based on certifications and
Right,
experience.
right. Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll
All right.
support that.
Are you gonna put in there to
We're gonna
why
slice
don't you
this
just
up
do it
one
all
to,
at- why don't you do it all at once?
revising the policy is one step at a time. Okay?
I think you can say you're gonna revise the policy and you're gonna pay A, B, C all on the same motion, but, all right.
Okay.
We do it all the time when we do a budget thing. We're gonna approve to buy a truck and we're gonna, revise the budget from line item whatever, all in one motion, but
All
whatever.
right. Are you still good with your motion?
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Supervisor.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Caprell to revise our part-time inspector policy from $25 to a range of $25 to $36 per hour based on certification and experience. Discussion? We've had quite a bit. Open up the floor for public comment.
Are you gonna, is it gonna be 25 to 36 with no benefits? I
Yes.
just want,
Yep.
okay, that's what I just wanna say. I'm not big on the race to the bottom, but, thank you.
Jim Sunstock, 31698 San Juan. I've listened to this whole thing and I'm still confused. You got single certified inspectors that currently make $25 an hour. You have double certified inspectors that make $25 an hour. They obviously work part-time. And so the question was asked when you went out and compared it to all of these other wages, that they were between 30 and 34, but those were all full-time. So then the question was asked, well, was there any part-time wages discussed? Does Chesterfield do it? No. Does anybody do it? I don't know. So what you're proposing to do is basically, I'm working part-time and I want a raise. And so I'm saying, oh, you know, they're making this much money over in Mount Clemens and over here in Sterling Heights and over in Clinton Township, and they're making 30 to 34, and I want 34. But wait a minute, you're part-time. They don't have part-time people over there. So why are you proposing to raise it to a full-time wage? That's crazy. You're talking about going from $25 up to, let's see, 34 or 36. That's 12, well, that's $9 an hour or $11 an hour wage increase. My gosh, you guys ought to all get your beards out and become Santa Claus. You're crazy. You tell those guys, this is the job pay, and if you want to work here part-time so that you can go work at your businesses and go work at some other community and whatever, and we make accommodations for you, this is what we pay. Now, if you want to give them a reasonable raise, $1, $2, something like that, but $9 and $11 because they said, I don't like to pay, well, if you don't like to pay, then I guess the question becomes, go find yourself a part-time job somewhere else and see if you get more. But no, you don't go. You guys are all sitting here, oh, well, we'll just give you all the money you want in the world. And then on top of it, you're telling me that the full-time contracted employees only make $24.75. If I was one of those full-time contracted employees, I'd tell you, you guys are crazy. And I'd get the union involved in it right then. How could you possibly consider paying somebody almost $9 or $10 more than your full-time employees are? You're not even making sense up here. I don't know what your management experience is, but you're not showing much management experience right now. That's not how you run a pay system. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Move back to board comment. At this point, I think all that's before us is revising the policy to a range. So unless there's any further comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Caprell to revise our part-time inspector policy to wages at a range of $25 to $36 per hour. It was pointed out with no benefits. That's in the policy already. We're just changing the 25 to a range based on certification and experience.
Could you do a roll call on that?
Sure.
I want to
Mr. Witt?
make sure that when things go bad on that.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Caprell?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
No.
Mr. Tominelli?
No.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. Good. So now we have an issue of what to pay our electrical inspector and what to pay our plumbing, mechanical, and backflow inspector. I can tell you it can't be 25 bucks. Whether we talk about these individuals or whether the board says, well, we don't want to continue our relationship with these individuals, You want to go out to the market to see what else we can find. I'm confident that $25 is not going to fill those seats. For almost 8 years, we've paid $25 per hour for that seat for the dual certified inspector. And there was a time when that rate was in line with the fact that there were a lot of folks that were laid off, and that part-time work was the only work they might be able to find. And some of those individuals have said, hey, now that things have rebounded, I'm looking for full-time work. But some of those inspectors, based on their age or other obligations that they have or relationships with other municipalities, are interested in part-time work. But they do expect a premium in exchange for not getting benefits. It's not fair to say, well, I'm going to work 20 hours for this community and you're going to pay half my health care and another community is going to pay the other half. So they've transitioned to a point where now they have assumed that responsibility themselves through some other means. And as a result of that, they're saying the hourly rate that I expect is, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, not necessarily reflective of the full-time rate, because the full-time rate comes with it retirement, vacation time, sick time, and so forth, health care, in some cases retiree health care. They're saying we're basically hired guns. We're at-will employees. You can say to us, we have no protections. Tomorrow we can say, we don't want you here anymore, pack up and you're gone. In exchange for those, what I would consider sacrifices, we're looking at some hourly rate. I don't think it's unreasonable to be in the range that full-time employees are making at an hourly rate to pay a part-time person that doesn't get benefits. I certainly don't suggest that our solution to this problem will to make these individuals full-time and go out in the market and hire full-time individuals with wages and benefits. But if we did, we might be able to get them for $27.45 an hour and not $35 an hour. But I don't think the solution is to make a full-time person with wages and benefits backfill a person that's part-time, that's working out good, that's really worked at a rate that's lower than what the current scale is for a period of time, and now has said, look, you know what, I can't do this any longer, I'm looking to go to another community. I don't blame the guy. He's not pointing, he literally didn't say to us, I'm leaving and this is the rate I want. He said, I'm giving you my 2-week notice, and it began for us a process of looking into, well, wait a minute, what is the rate? Well, what are you getting? Well, this is what I'm getting to move to another community. Okay. What other relationships are out there? I think it was mentioned that some of the inspectors that do part-time work, and we learned this when we interviewed for the building official position, some communities have a per inspection relationship, not a per hour relationship, but rather our inspection fee is this much and you get X% of every inspection, so that you go out, do the inspection, you get a cut, we get a cut. So some of the relationships that communities have are that way. So when we look at what do part-time inspectors make, not every community has a relationship that's a per hour relationship. Some of them have by the inspection relationship where they're kind of a contract employee, not a direct employee that receives a wage for the hours worked. We have a relationship where we pay an hourly rate. It's worked out pretty good for us because it gives us the availability to have those folks over multiple days available to do the inspections. Certainly it's worked out pretty good lately as, some of the home improvements and, construction. We had condo units that sat dormant, with just a foundation for a few years. Those were finished up. We had the qualified inspectors available to do that work. We don't need full-time inspectors. We're gonna have part-time inspectors. We've got to come up with a rate that's not too much, but it's enough to keep or to hire, in the event that we lose, qualified inspectors. Not bodies, but people who basically service our residents.
Mr. Supervisor, so I'm not against the flexibility in the rate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm not comfortable with is giving someone a 40% raise.
I'm not comfortable with it
Okay,
either.
so I guess my thought is, now that the ranges, as far as the policy has changed to encompass a range,
Mm-hmm.
I think what we need to look at is not giving a 40% raise, maybe giving a 10 or 15 or 20% raise immediately, and then it can be reassessed in a year or so
Okay.
to see what you want to do going, here's the whole thing is, you can look at the market, you can see what the market's bearing. You know, here's the whole thing, people want to work part-time, they want to work part-time for a reason, like you said. Sometimes they'll take a lower rate to work those hours, because that's exactly what they want. You know, to work part-time to get those hours at any other business, maybe a Myers or a Home Depot, well, you know, then it's a whole different story. So the situation that they're in is both convenient for us and for them. So I guess that's why my thought is, I'm not opposed to increasing the rate. I just don't think we should give a 40% raise in one fell swoop.
Okay, so if we, so to expound on that, if we said that an inspector, if we looked at a 20% raise, for example, that goes from $25 to $30 an hour. So if we said, all right, well, we recognize that in the case of one of these fellas, it's been 3 years, another fella, it's been 8 years, or his predecessor, that position, we've paid the same rate for an 8-year period in that position. So maybe 25 is no longer the rate that's applicable to an inspector, and maybe 30 is more in line with the market rate. It's still less than just about every contract that I found online that I was able to print out and put before the board. So if we establish 30 as a base, I'm good with that. I mean, that's a great start. That's fine.
Well, and I think that shows good faith for the part-time employees that we have.
Right.
You know, I think that tells them that we appreciate their service, we appreciate, you know, what they're bringing to us, and we're benefiting from them as well.
Right.
So again, I think it's a win-win. And then we sort of control on how we want to bring those folks up to what rate at what time.
Right. So 30, I believe, is a rate that whether or not these two individuals stick around, 30 is a rate that I believe the market would bear for us to find somebody. I think we're in that range with 30. The concern I have is I don't believe for 30 I'm gonna find someone that's dual or triple certified to be able to
But you
provide
don't
all
know
those
that.
services.
You don't know that.
I think a 28 to 30 is reasonable. I think you could find somebody 28 to 30.
But now, and when you say you think so, what do you base that you think 28 to 30 will be the rate?
I believe that 28 to $30 an hour would net us a result
Okay.
in finding a part-time person because after listening to everyone, I believe that we're making as much of a compromise to accommodate them as much as they are receiving that benefit on their end. Let's not, kid ourselves. They're working here part-time, and we're also allowing them other opportunities to work at a different capacity, which is fine. But I don't think we should be overpaying them. I think $28 to $30 an hour is fine. Because if they can't do it for $28 to $30 an hour, I think they'd be hard pressed to find somebody else that would pay them more than that.
It would seem to me that starting at 20, it's all relative, that starting at, I'm sorry.
And furthermore, I think that I agree with Larry, we should keep in mind that we'll be willing to increase their pay over a period of time. But I'm adamant that we should not be giving them someone a raise that's all at one time 30, 40%. It's crazy. There's no way.
Right.
I would agree that it shows that the board has been willing to compromise and bring the scale up quite significantly at 20%. So I think it's good that we have a range, and I think that increasing it by 20% is certainly generous.
Right. Well, make sure we understand, we have a range. I can't go back to it. We're talking about either A, 2 individuals, or B, if either or both of those individuals choose not to agree to this, and frankly, I think one will and one will not. That's where I think we're at right now, and which is fine. But my point is I can't propose. Let me back up. I understand the debate, and I appreciate that, and I respect it. we're not at a phase where we can talk about ranges right now. This board has to say, you can authorize this individual X dollars per hour, you can authorize this individual X dollars per hour. Certainly you understand if I went to you, Bill, and I said, hey, I'd like to hire you for $28 to $30 an hour, you only heard one of those numbers. I can't go to an individual and say, hey, the board voted 28 to 30, what would you like? I'm guessing they're not gonna come back at 28, although I respect that. So this board has to say to offer a single or a dual certified inspector X dollars per hour, and I make that offer. In the event that they say, thanks but no thanks, then I have to go out and begin a search for an individual to do that at some hourly rate. I can't say to that person, you know, I can certainly say, hey, we're in a range, but to an individual that we have a current relationship with, I can't go to them with a range. I have to say, for example, I have to go to the single certified inspector and say, the board, by a motion, authorized me to offer you $30 per hour to increase your rate, right? Then I have to go to the other individual who's performing 3 functions for the township and say, the board authorized me to offer you X. If it's 30, then I offer 30. I'm confident that the fella will say, well, my 2 weeks notice were up, but I told my employer I'd wait to see what you'd offer, but they've already offered him more than that, and I respect that. But the point is that I already know the fella saying, well, I could work 5 miles from my home or drive 25 miles each day, but I'm certainly gonna work 5 miles from home for more per hour. And he didn't come to us with a threat. He just said, hey, I'm giving you my notice. And when we said, well, you know, what would it take for you to stay? What's the deal? What are you getting? What does the market bear? He said, well, I'm kind of surprised that you'd counter offer. So he said, well, this is what I'm getting, and this is the reason why I'm moving. I said, okay, well, that's fair. If we want to keep this individual, and we believed collectively that the value of the service that he provides makes it worth bringing this before the board. But I respect the fact that the board may not see it the same as I do. I'm one of 7 members. If we're gonna do something different though, I have to have 2 things from this board. We have a range, and that's fine. I have to then have a number to offer each individual, and in the event that they don't, I need, that they literally say thanks but no thanks, I have to have the authorization to advertise and interview for an inspector to come back with a, you know, the approval to come back before the board.
And we've been beating this up long enough, so I'm just gonna ask this question, even though I've said everything. I've not talked to any of these individuals. I don't know what the discussion was. So, does anybody know what their bottom line rate is?
You're looking at it. That's,
Then they're gonna leave anyway.
for Doug, the $36 an hour is what it takes to keep him. So what he's waiting for is this meeting adjourns, I text him and say yay or nay. If it's no, he starts his new employment somewhere else tomorrow, and we're without an inspector in 3 different departments, which we've already postponed inspections because his last day was Thursday. So we're already behind with nobody to fill.
So we're in trouble here. We're not only, you know, so I'm not even gonna get into that whole discussion, but, all right.
This is what happened at 2 weeks.
Well, see, here, I'm not gonna get into it, I'm
But the
sorry.
other thing, us as an employer should not be held hostage.
We're not held
That's
hostage.
what
That's the whole
drives-
point. That's the whole point. You have to
That's what drives
understand.
me crazy.
We're not held hostage. The
Well,
individual.
No, we are, because that's what we're being told.
No, you're you need to understand. The individual comes to us, a part-time employee that we've had for probably a 2 to 3 year period,
Not asking for more money.
right? And he said, you know what, I'm gonna give you my 2 weeks notice. I found a position that's closer to home, that pays substantially more, so I'd like to leave. Dave came to me and said, we've got trouble. Doug has given us his 2 week notice. And I said, well, before we give him up, we should find out what that cost is.
Okay.
I can't take action inside of that 2 week notice. I can't provide anything. I have to bring to this board a motion to either look at an increase in the wage, look at some other employment situation, look at something else. Prior to that, I can't possibly say to you, I got a feeling that in 3 weeks, Doug's gonna give us his 2 week notice, so we need to address this wage. What we have is we have someone who came to us and said, and by the way, the rate is really, really low. So that prompted us to do some investigation, to look into this, and for me to say, you know what, his request for the hourly rate seems to be in line with what other communities are paying for this position, along with benefits. Although I don't like the notion of the increase, I do believe having one guy here 4 out of 5 days a week that can provide 3 different types of inspections is of value. And we know the individual, we know he's qualified. Is it the number I'm comfortable with? No, I'd probably be comfortable in the $32 to $33 per hour range, quite frankly. However, I have a choice. We bring it before this board.
I'm ready to
Believe
make
me,
a motion.
Believe
if
me,
we can.
politically, I
We've
have
gone
no
over this
interest
for
in.
an hour and a half.
Understand, let me finish.
can
I have no interest
I'll make a
politically in
motion.
trying to convince this board that we should spend $36 an hour. I don't like that. I get it.
I'm
I
ready to make a
understand.
motion.
Can I ask one more question? The position of this individual is moving to, is it also a part-time or is it a full-time?
Part-time,
Without benefits?
without benefits.
So, okay, so with that said, I guess my thought is, if you take somebody who's making $25 an hour, which our inspectors are doing, or $27.45, correct? Per
Well,
dual?
well, no, 20,
No, we don't
25
have those
is
making
part-time.
25.
Okay, so, no, I'm talking about a full-time.
Full-time is $27.45.
$27.45. And if you're looking at a fully loaded FTE, full-time employee, benefits typically range between 30 and 40%.
We're
They're a lot
60.
more, just our pension is that
We're
much.
60.
So,
Are they 60?
We're 60 here,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so, all right, so that throws, okay.
The cost of one full-time is gonna be equate to the more than the 2 part-time.
I'm ready to make a motion.
So that comes out to about $36 an hour at 60%. So if that's the case, why don't we just hire one full-time inspector at $27.45, fully loaded, is $35 an hour?
to do what trade?
It's gonna cost us double.
No, it's not, because
He's
you,
40
Hold on.
hours a week, this guy's 20
Yes.
hours a week.
If I may, and I can tell you, the rates from 2012 are here, and they were, for Clinton Township, they were $30.07 an hour. I personally spoke with the representatives from Clinton and Chesterfield. They currently are at $33.24 an hour with a raise already.
We have the new contract, that's what I printed out for them, so that we have it, it's through 2018.
And Chesterfield is very similar to the same, so 27, you're still $5
So-
at least.
But a more important question to ask is, what do we accomplish by hiring one full-time inspector? Because we have to have someone who does electrical, someone who does plumbing, someone who does mechanical,
Correct.
and someone who does backflow
I'm
prevention.
just talking numbers here.
Right.
So that is at least a dual licensed inspector
Okay,
at $27.45.
okay.
And what do we do about the other one?
Full-time.
But the problem is,
No, I understand. You have
Right,
another
so
one
what
with a
you've just
totally
proposed
different
is
mechanical.
is to literally double the cost of what we're doing now, and there's no demand for it. That's, in other words, what I'm saying, in essence, what you just said is right now our contract says $36 an hour is what we would pay for a full-time inspector that's dual certified. But I got a guy that does 3 different inspections, not to say we couldn't hire a dual certified and have him get the 3rd certification. I mean, that's achievable. But what we have is we already have a guy who's worked for he or his predecessor, because prior to having him, we had other dual certified guys that worked for $25 an hour for quite a time. And they're saying, look, you know what? The economy's rebounding, the trades are coming back, the rates that are being paid in the open market are substantially greater than what you've been paying me. I like the relationship, but I'm going somewhere else. We don't have to run after him with a fist of cash. I get it. I understand that. I'm willing to bet we can keep one inspector for $30 an hour, but the multi-certified inspector, I know we won't keep at $30 an hour, and I'm not certain that we'll find someone else out there that's at $30 an hour.
Okay, so we sort of have our back up against the wall, and fully loaded would be $82,400 based on the $51,525 salary. Is that what you got, Larry? I just took the 51,000.
36 and change,
I-
or 35 and change
So,
an hour.
okay, so that can't be.
And that's the current contract, of course.
Yeah, that can't be. That seems a little low. Our benefits aren't just $8. If you have 60, that's gonna add, on $27, it's gonna add at least 15,
Yeah, I don't know where you got that number.
$16 an hour.
16.50.
On top of 27.
Yes.
If we did.
Okay, so this is what I will say. We have to feel like we have a little bit of a win here, right, in the negotiations, and I get our backs against the wall, which I despise. I will say that. I despise getting this and having a gun put to my head and.
No one's put a gun to our
Now,
head.
just wait. That's the way I feel. People are saying, our inspections aren't gonna get done, our residents are gonna suffer.
None of that's true.
And I'm hearing that we can't hire anybody, which in my mind leads me to think that it's gonna be another month before I can actually get somebody in here employed. And there are companies that can do that.
Right, none of that is true. We can exist, so our backs aren't up against the wall. No
I'm
one's put a
trying
gun
to
our
talk,
head.
Mr. Verkest.
I understand,
Please,
but
I
you've gotta
don't
say-
need to, I do
you
not
gotta
need
say
to
true
hear the
statements.
same nonsense over for another 2 hours.
Well,
Okay,
you're
I'm
saying
about- I'm
nonsense.
about-
No
I'm-
one said any of the things you've said. No one's put a gun to our head. No one said we can't get inspections done.
You have said that for the last hour.
No, I have not.
You have.
I have
Yes, you
not.
have. You've said it 3 times.
I have never said we can't get inspections done. For example, when our last inspector left or gave us notice, during that time, we
If you
contract with
wouldn't
other
have,
laid
if
off
you
or other
wouldn't
retired
have
inspectors.
interrupted me, I was going to finish my sentence, and instead of sitting here till 1 in the morning at this point, rehashing the same things, I don't know how this board feels. I know how we roughly feel, but I'm not going to put the residents saying everything I've said. I need to have an inspector tomorrow for inspections and moving forward.
Okay.
But I also, as a manager, feel like I need to have a little bit of a win, right? And I agree that $36. So I don't know if they're going to go for this or not, but I will make a motion reluctantly to pay $33 for the electrical inspector and $35 for the dual inspector. And whether that passes or fails, I don't know. I don't like it. But at the same time, I don't know what the option is.
Would you consider 32 and 36?
You can't give one guy,
34 and 36.
No. You just proposed 33 and 35.
I was proposing $1 less because I have to feel like I get a win.
I understand.
Right?
What I'm saying
At
is,
33 and 35, I can
what if I
sort of-
told you 30 and 36?
It's a savings.
That's
It's
what
a
I'm trying to
savings
say.
over your proposal.
What I'm trying to say is replacing a single certified inspector is a completely different matter than in essence, a triple certified inspector. So I'm asking you if you would consider amending your motion to 32 and 36.
Same money.
Right,
I will do that.
okay.
As much as I don't want to, but I got to have inspectors at this point.
That's fair. Is there support?
I'll support that.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Capral. I think we've discussed it quite a bit.
I was just getting started.
Yeah, I was kind of gonna ask you to pipe down there, Mr. Witt. We'll open up the floor for public comment.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. I think Larry was on track. And no matter how much you deny it, this gentleman has threatened Harrison Township. If you don't do what I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna leave. Well, then leave. And I know the guy, he's a pretty nice guy.
Great guy.
But you know what? If that's the way you feel, then leave. You're not going to hold us over the barrel, or you're not going to hold a gun to our head. I don't care who you are. Go. It's unbelievable that you guys are even considering a $12 raise for somebody, 36, oh, I'm sorry, $11 raise, and a $9 raise for somebody. That's unbelievable. He's working part-time because he wants to work part-time. He's going over someplace else as part-time. Well, you know what? If they're going to pay you that much, then let them go out of business over there wherever he's going, instead of us. You said we have an option. We have the option to contract the inspections out. So if he leaves tomorrow, go contact the other municipality and contract them out. And maybe you'll find out that that's even a better deal than having a part-time inspector there. If it's break even, it's at least that. But to sit there and pay somebody that kind of percentage of money when you haven't paid it to anybody else, when your current full-time inspectors are getting paid less, that's not the way the world runs. Usually part-time inspectors get paid less. Part-time people get paid less. Not more than the full-timers. I never heard of that. That's one of the advantages to being full-time. You're supposed to make more money than the part-time people. Actually, the part-time people have some benefits themselves. They get their job flexibility, the schedule flexibility. They get all of that. You've got people in this township that you are paying $10 an hour, and they drive people, have people's lives in their hand. And yet you're sitting here, somebody's going to sit there and hold a gun to our head and says, I want $12 or I want $11 an hour. And if you don't pay it to me and I don't get a phone call after this meeting tonight, I'll be over at the other job tomorrow morning. You ought to take a motion that says, adios. That's what you ought to do. I make a motion.
My gut.
I make a motion that we say adios to the inspector and wish him well in his new job, and vote on it. That would send a message. Instead, you're going to capitulate. Again, we're back to the old axiom. It's not